So my name is Bhante Jāgaro. I am happy to be here at Empty Land Monastery. This is actually my second time visiting. Please have a seat and make yourself comfortable, whether it's on the floor or on the, sitting on a seat, chair. And if you feel uncomfortable, please feel free to stand up during this meditation. And if the cat comes over, it's very customary. You may stop meditating and pet the cat. But he'll very much enjoy. So
He's getting in position.
yes. Oh, great. He's going to join us. Okay. So keeping a relatively upright posture. Bringing a sense of presence. Just getting a sense for what the mind, the body are feeling right now. I'll offer some brief instructions. If you already have a meditation practice you feel comfortable with, please continue doing that. Otherwise, I'll just share some guidance. We're just getting a sense for where's the attention right now? Coming into a meditation, sometimes attention may be off of something we've been thinking about previously, some memories, or attention can be somewhere in the body. Just getting a sense for where is the attention generally resting right now. Getting a sense for the mood of the mind, what it's inclining towards. If there's any emotions, thoughts, just being present to that. And seeing if widen, open, very gently being with the experience. Seeing if we can encourage the mind to be with how the body is feeling. Just wherever it's most prominent. And just encouraging the mind to just be very attentive and present. Moving our attention just very broad, getting a sense for how the entire body feels. Not focusing on anything particular. Very, very gently encouraging the mind to just be present with the upper half of the body. Ordinary things that feels maybe feel heat or pressure, coolness. It's generally the upper half of the body. Not looking for anything special. Moving our attention to the lower part of the body. Again, anywhere is fine. Might feel pressure from where you're making contact with your seat. Might feel warmth, coolness. You might feel tingling, itchiness. Might not feel much at all. Just try to be present for how the lower part of the body feels. Turning our attention to the upper part of the body. Let's see if you can bring your attention maybe to just the head. And where the neck and shoulders meet. And the arms. The front of the torso. The belly. The sides. the upper part of the back, and the lower part of the back. It's okay if you don't feel anything at all. Just rest your attention wherever it feels comfortable in the upper part of the body. Your mind is naturally drawn towards the breathing. Wherever you feel it, rest your attention there. Wherever there's a sense of ease. Or wherever there's a sense that helps, it can help your mind be with the current experience. Moving our attention to the lower part of the body. See if you can rest your attention on just the feet. The calves and shins, the knees, lower thighs, the upper thighs, the backside, the pelvis. See if there's a place that's can rest your attention. Bring your attention back towards the upper body. And repeating the same process. After 1 or 2 or 3 cycles of breathing, and bring your attention to the lower part of the body. Resting your attention wherever it feels ease or mind can rest. And after 1 or 2 or 3 cycles of breathing, bring you back to the upper part of the body. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Hello, everybody. Thank you to Venerable Suddhaso and Ayya Soma for inviting me to monastery. This is my second visit, and delighted to be back, and also to see old friends, Summoner Mitiko and Daniel, who I didn't meet here last time, but I actually met when I was visiting Ajahn Nisabo in Seattle. And so it was a delight to see him as well. And all our friends, I think everybody here, maybe I haven't met yet, and of course our internet visitors out, whoever is watching or listening right now. Can't forget about our friend Teddy, who I think was here making his rounds. He did pretty good for a little bit. I saw him but now he's gone. For those that know Teddy, it's the temporary monastery cat. He arrived, I think, just not too long ago, the day that I arrived here earlier this week, and looking for a new home. And I'm very much the same way. I just arrived earlier this week and looking for a new home. And in truth, all of us are very much on a similar journey. Some of our arcs may be shorter, some arcs may be a little bit longer, and some may be very long. But at some point, the arc will result in moving on to a different home. Sometimes I think about places I've lived as a monastic. I ordained full monk 6.5 years ago. Of course, before that, just as an ordinary, I guess we'd call it lay person or regular person, ordinary person. We all take on different homes. So I was with my parents for a certain amount of time, back in California, and then leave that home, go to Northern California, a new home. And then after Northern California, go from one home to another home in California. I repeat, and eventually, I'll go to another home on the East Coast. And of course, everybody here, we have our own stories, our own lives of going from one home to another. And it's really, this is one of those things that it's easy to overlook. It's easy to assume that where we are is fixed, it's permanent. Where I'm living right now is fixed and permanent. And there's a practicality to that. We have to, the IRS asks for our address, so we have to write something in, I don't know what else. Pretty much everything, I guess, asks for address. I was trying to figure out recently, trying to sign up to Maryland Transportation Authority, and they wanted, of course, they say physical address, but we want your email address and your phone number. So these are different homes we occupy, just as physical homes anymore, virtual homes. And we get a sense of it. That's permanent, and there's a sense of that's kind of fixed. But if we reflect on it, we realize, oh, wait a minute, I didn't have that forever. And if we think about it a little bit more, it's like, yeah, at some point, I may not have this home anymore. I may move for one reason or another. I may, email addresses come and go. Phone numbers get changed, we lose our phone, we want a different service, go to another country. And even if we get our kind of everything set up, and a lot of times we might find a lot of comfort, kind of, okay, work really hard in my life, kind of, got a nice home, nice job, a nice family, but we realize at some point we're going to have to move on, whether it's retirement or we're going to pass away at some point. And so it's always important to keep this in mind, that, it's this sense of this home is actually temporary now. And as monks, monastics, we're mendicants, we take on, most of us take on a very, how do you say, temporary life. We often travel from a monastery to another. I think Venerable Suddhaso and Ayya Soma, or this recent, back in November, they were in Italy, wandering, and going from one place to another, sometimes staying in monasteries, sometimes staying outdoors. And so their homes were changing every day, or almost every day. And then sometimes we settle down for a little bit of time, a little bit longer periods of time, and then we leave. And so as monastics, we do these practices to actually help us remind ourselves of this basic reality, that our homes are temporary. And of course, it just doesn't refer to our physical homes, doesn't refer to our email addresses or Instagram accounts. It also refers to our body, physical body, our sense of our personalities, our names, sense of identity. These things are temporary as well. There, at some point, even if you get everything figured out, it's got maybe 120 years, usually max. You can max that out. And a lot of times, as monks and monastics, where we get these instruction and teachings from our teacher, the Buddha, or other wise disciples who aspire to listen to. And so we take on these trainings. And so kind of one might come new to this, somebody's new to Buddhism. And gosh, guys do these things, you're like, seems kind of uncomfortable, right? Why can't you just find a nice place, like a nice bed, some nice, kitchenware, just kind of settle in, enjoy life, you guys. What are you trying to do, And this is actually a really good question. I recently, I was up north in the Boston area, and I got a chance to visit my cousin I haven't seen in a long time. And he has 2 kids. And the older one, she asked me, it's like, what are you monks trying to do? What's the whole point of this? You just noticing that, you sleep on the floor and you don't eat dinner. And, it's like, what? It's like, yeah, that's true. It's like, that doesn't sound like fun. And so we are actually pursuing happiness, just like hopefully most everybody, but we're seeking a different kind of happiness than usually how we're mostly accustomed to. So the kind of customary forms of happiness. For myself, most of my life I had the sense of, okay, if I just kind of work really hard at something, I'll get a reward. And that's my happiness, right? Work really hard at something, A plus, the paper, work really hard and, you get money and you can go out and, get a nice dinner, and go to a party or something. And that was a reward. There was a happiness in that. And it is true, there's a happiness of getting what you want. But of course, everybody here, I'm sure has seen like, well, it doesn't last forever. We work or we do things, we get what we want sometimes, usually not all the time. For some people, almost, it can be really frustrating because some parts of life almost it doesn't seem like anything works and can't get anything they want. And so, but we're looking for these forms of happiness. Maybe I could just find a nice place to cuddle, warm place. Okay, found it. Okay. This is great. This feels so good, right? And there's a happiness in that. But that kind of happiness doesn't last forever. And so we may seek out a different kind of happiness. And this is the happiness that the Buddha was pointing to, was the happiness of non-clinging, of letting go of things. And this is for when we're growing up, it's kind of unintuitive. It's like, what do you mean? But it's not something even young kids, can recognize. We're on alms ground this morning, and we're out in what was it called? Montclair, around Montclair, the farmers market out there, and we're out there with our alms bowl, and people are passing by, and there's this a woman with her child walking by. She was about 10 years old, and when we sometimes wave and say hello, and they walked on, and then the child came back and he looked at us and says, "Are you guys looking for inner peace?" I'm like, yeah, that's right. He gets it. And so this is actually the happiness that we're trying to find. We're trying to develop more stable forms of happiness. And so these more stable forms of happiness actually you can think are resting places or springboards for the incredibly deep forms of happiness that the Buddha is pointing to. And so this is, we can get a sense, if we practice meditation, we practice being kind, to others, being generous, petting cats when they come by, and we can get a sense for, there's different kinds of happinesses, the happiness of like taking care of others, right? It's a kind of light form of happiness, and it kind of brings a smile to one's face and delights others, and it's not really kind of oriented around kind of gratiating some sort of want or craving. And so you get a sense like, there's different kinds of happinesses, and so we get a sense of trying out Buddhism or what many other religions teach similar things. We get a sense of there's other forms of happiness, and then if we keep at this, we can get a sense of these teachers they keep mentioning this thing called letting go. We might be inspired, sometimes, like, maybe I should try that, I seem really, caught up with something that's going on in my life, or I'm suffering along with something. I keep talking about letting go. It's like, maybe I should try that. And it's like, no, I want to get what I want, And occasionally, maybe, after a while, you go, they keep talking about letting go. It's like, okay, well, What am I holding on to? And then so we try. It's like, and sometimes we can let it go for a little bit, and then we get, if we actually, the mind actually can let go of it a little bit. It's like, we put the pieces in. We encourage the mind. We try to find apply our mind in different ways according to the Buddhist teachings. And it's like, oh, we get these experiences of like, oh, wait a minute, the mind's not grasping at this anymore. It's like, oh, okay. So you get a sense of that there's a wow, there's a peace. It's like I don't, it feels like kind of heaviness isn't there anymore. You know, whatever I was worked up about, it's not even there. Oh, and of course, sometimes it might just come roaring back. You're like, oh, what just happened? You know, a few days later. But sometimes it may stick around. You know, it's like, oh, let go. You get a sense of letting, what that sense of letting go is, of not holding on to things, of not getting entangled with this, that, or the other. Oh, is this kind of getting a sense? Is this what's being pointed to? This is, you know, what? How is this? You know, oh. So as we develop, getting this kind of sense of confidence in Buddhist teachings, we start taking on additional practices. We say, oh, oh gosh, you know, maybe take on you hear about these precepts. Oh, you know, okay. Precepts, what's that? You know, it's like, oh, okay. No, it's a precept is just being the first. Oh, okay. Like every being, you know, from humans to cats to dogs to even mice, right? All beings may be at ease, right? And it's like, okay, I'm gonna really try. I'm not gonna kill. I'm not saying I'm not maybe gonna whack them sometimes, but I'm not gonna kill them. You know. I can do that, right? And okay, it's like, oh, it's like I'm not gonna steal anything. Okay. I think I can do that. I'm not gonna steal anything. Okay. I'm not gonna take advantage of anybody sexually. Okay. I can do that. I'm not gonna. Whoa, not gonna lie. Whoa, okay, I'm not sure. No, okay, okay, maybe I'll give it a try. Okay, not taking. Well, when you can't drink alcohol, and this, I don't know about that. You're getting a sense of, you know, okay, you know, when I remember I was a layperson, when I first came in contact with Buddhism, I remember reading about the 5 precepts, and it was like, I get it. And I was inspired. I took a meditation course, and I was like, okay, this seems like it makes sense, but I'm not sure. Okay, 5 precepts make life really dreary. I could do 2. I did 2 of them, and that's what I did. I can do 2 of them. That's what I did. And over time, I actually started to see the benefit of trying to restrain myself from those 2 things. And because the point of these precepts isn't to, how do you say, not to be kind of grim and dour. It's actually to be, happy and at ease. You know, when we, it's to be free of regret. It's to have a sense of self-confidence, a sense of being connected with others, right? You know, I see in my mind, if I'm like, that's even like, physically somebody, but, you like, let's say, talk, really aggressively to somebody, or kind of really hurtful way. And afterwards, you realize, like, oh, you feel like you kind of damaged something between you and the other person, right? And it just doesn't feel good, right? And so these precepts are actually designed to help protect the happiness of actually being in a connection with others and feeling a sense of confidence around that. And so these confidence, I'm I did 4 of these, I could do 5 precepts. You work up the confidence over time, and you get a sense for like there's happiness and being kind and generous. There's a happiness in taking on precepts. There's a happiness in listening to these teachings and trying to apply them, and we get kind of increasingly confident in this. And so, of course, for a lot of us, for myself, I eventually was decided, oh, well, maybe I read the suttas, the text of recorded teachings of the Buddha, and talks about, monastics, mendicants, bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, all over the place. It's usually who he's addressing much of the suttas. And it's like, what's that? Because I never met him before. I remember seeing like videos of the Dalai Lama, but, so that kind of, I kind of started thinking about that. It's like, oh, maybe I want to try that, opportunity to do that. So, that's, kind of these kind of inclinations, kind of confidence in the teachings of Buddha can lead towards one taking on additional practices that on the outset seem quite strange, almost counterproductive to happiness. But when you kind of see over time, like, oh, there are forms of happiness that don't depend on getting what one wants, but in fact, kind of material or sensory wants, but but instead developing a kind of, as the kid says, developing inner peace. And this is a sort of happiness that makes more and more sense over time. Like for myself, just my cousin's daughter. It's like, this is why I sleep on the floor, and this is why I don't eat dinner. Why I go in the morning, cold weather, try to collect all this food, because we're trying to find deeper forms of happiness. And so I guess I wish, it's funny, I wish that my cousin daughter could hear this. This is kind of a long story of trying to answer her question, which is a really good question. Why we do these things. So it's for the sake of happiness and ease, and for the sake of well-being of myself and others. That's why we do this. So I guess it's 7 o'clock that we usually stop now for questions. Did we do any sort of closing chant or?
Yes.
Okay.
Namayan Makataya Saryokarang Dadamase
Sadhu, 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 anumodami.
Thank you, Venerable, for those lovely words of Dhamma. And at this time, if you have any questions for him, you're welcome to ask him some questions. Questions about anything related to Buddhism? Do you have a question, sir? Do you have a question in the back?
Also, comments are welcome.
Is there?
Or if you're distracted by the cat.
Yes.
I have a question about the precepts,
Mm-hmm.
particularly the precept of not lying.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard this worded as, rather than I take the precept to not lie, it's worded sometimes as I take the precept to refrain from false and harmful speech.
Mm-hmm.
And I've found in dealing with monastics who have a lot of tact, sometimes, actually living in the monastery and living in monasteries in general, I have found a profound sense of safety from knowing that I will not be lied to,
Mm-hmm.
but I lose that sense of safety when I realize that someone is talking around something or someone is deceiving me
Mm.
by not explicitly lying, but speaking in a way that leads me to think other than the truth. And I'm wondering what your thoughts on that might be.
If I understand what you're saying, it's like a kind of using kind of very legalistic words, being deceptive, and so not maybe I'm not technically lying because it's technically true. Like, is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. That's a good question. One of the things that I think is really helpful always when coming back, they say to kind of take a step back in these kind of situations and always looking at what's the inclination of the mind right now. In other words, is the mind tending towards kind of a wholesome impulses or is it tending unwholesome impulses? Is the mind tending towards kind of greed or kind of hatred, right? Or just, what's often called delusion, just, kind of make up a story. Or is it more inclined towards, or is typically in the text like non-greed, which basically means like, things like generosity, care, non-hatred, which means like compassionate, and non-delusion, which is being very truthful. I think you're saying very kind of present and truthful, wise, alert. And so it's always really important to, in these kind of situations, for the person speaking to reflect, well, what is my inclination of mind? Because truthfully, in my experience, we can rationalize just about anything, right? We can come up with a good reason for doing behavior X, behavior Y. But what's more clear is how does this actually feel, and what's the effect? What's the actual practical effect it has on others and myself, right? So if I, for example, let's say I speaking something, I'm trying to not some situation, I'm trying not to lie, and I kind of to use your example, I'm technically not lying, but I'm kind of deceptive, right? Okay, so then okay, maybe I get a sense. Well, maybe I'm doing it for a good, it feels like a relatively wholesome inclination, but if I get a sense for how actually the effect of it is maybe kind of destructive. I get a sense for maybe others are not trusting me so much. Oh, you need to take that information in. Okay, maybe that wasn't the best. I should do that. Yeah. So it's not just looking at the kind of trying to be legalistic. It's also looking at our those basic intentions, that kind of this movements. It's usually called like Chaitanya, Pali language, or just, well, what's that movement, and then also recognize what's the effect, what's the vipaka, or what's the actual result of whatever's going on. On the receiving end, right? If you're, let's say, around somebody and like, yeah, and they let's say they speak like this, like, and you find out later, it's like, oh, they're maybe technically trying to be truthful, but they're deceptive. And it's important to kind of similarly find out, well, how am I responding to this? How does it feel? So I can imagine for myself feeling like, if let's say it's somebody you felt like you trusted before, felt betrayed, right? Or might feel angry or sad. And it's important not to, how do you say? It's important to be with those emotions, right? Because they're trying to tell you something, and at the same time, trying to take a wider view and going, okay, what's the appropriate response to this, right? It's, in other words, we may feel, let's say, maybe we feel like, I'm just, again, for myself, I might feel something close to me, I might feel let's say angry, right? But we don't necessarily just want to act out on that anger, right? I mean, I know enough of that, but this is being a Buddhist monk by now, right? Okay, don't act on anger, okay. But at the same time, we don't want to just ignore it either. We want to take see if we can include that, and then see, okay, what's the appropriate response, right? So maybe the appropriate response is not necessarily dealing with that person right now. Maybe oh, I need to take care of myself right now. What would help? Maybe I should. Maybe there's a nice cat around I can pet for a while. I might cheer myself up, And then we have a little bit of a different perspective, right? And then if we're a little bit have a little more levity, a little bit wider view, maybe we can come back to that situation and maybe we can talk to that person afterwards. So I hope that answers the question.
On that note, what if someone always, I don't know if this is narcissism, someone has to always be right? No, seriously. No.
You're not talking about him, I hope.
Hey, he brought me to this beautiful place.
Okay.
No, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a delusion to that as well, right? So how do you, like when someone says, this is the best I can do, like an excuse for behavior.
Yeah.
Just a no-no.
Yeah.
What do you see? How do you have compassion for someone? I'm trying to live a life of compassion now.
Mhm.
And how do you have compassion for people that always make excuses for their behavior?
I mean, really what comes out to me, and that, again, I'm just kind of impulsively, I'm not saying this is the appropriate response in your situation, but it's it's not, sometimes compassion gets this sort of sense of we have to be kind of, I don't know, soft or evasive, and that can be that's one manifestation of compassion. But sometimes compassion, compassion to me, it's two things. It's being willing to be in the presence of suffering, and that you can't necessarily always do it, but is it possible this being to be free of suffering? So it's kind of two parts. Can I be with that suffering, and may this being be free of that? And so it's not so much of kind of acting, like I said, kind of, everything's okay. That's not what that's not how I interpret compassion. It's more, it can be very soft and gentle, right? In a certain situation. In other situations, you're like, I don't think this is good for this other person. This is actually harmful because it's destroying the relationship between me and if it's between you, it's probably happening with other people too. Unfortunately, a lot of times people go through life, they might be quite older, 70, 80 years old, including in retirement, and it's worked for them to whatever extent it's worked for them, that kind of behavior. So you have to also be a little realistic about what maybe you can or cannot do in terms of that. Usually, these are generalizations, but usually younger, it's a little bit easier sometimes to maybe point some things out. Maybe over time that person can learn. But really sometimes the most compassionate thing to do is to respond more directly, or not at all, because sometimes it's like, actually, I don't think I can. You may recognize in yourself, this is actually too much for me, so you may not be able to. And that's actually the most compassionate thing to do for both people involved. So again, hopefully that gives you some kind of context. Sometimes it can be very caring and gentle. Sometimes it can be being very direct. And sometimes it can mean maybe just breaking off both things, communication for a while. So I hope that gives you some ideas.
We have a question from the live stream.
Mm-hmm.
Rick asks, Venerable, can you share some reflections on right effort regarding how hard to push past our momentary discomforts versus being content with our current levels of practice? Thank you.
Well, I mentioned, Ayya Soma mentioned that both Venerable Suddhaso and I ordained at the Vaigiri Monastery, and our preceptor was Ajahn. And I really, really liked how his formulation of right effort and the way you would often describe right effort is our wholesome, whatever we're doing, with whatever actions or non-actions we're doing, our wholesome dhammas increasing and our unwholesome dhammas decreasing, right? So the right effort is not so much like how do you say, kind of like a gas pedal, and like you're trying to figure out like how much gas to put on. I guess these days more and more cars are using electric, so the pedal, and so it's not so much of like trying to adjust the speed of your vehicle, how much kind of, you could say, kind of energy maybe, but it's more of continuously bringing that sense of reflection, like is my mind becoming brighter, more at ease, happier, is it more content with whatever I'm doing, or is it becoming more agitated, frustrated, irritated, upset, angry, and so that's more of what, right? It's more of a there's an action part to it, and there's a reflective part to it, and so you have to be willing to try things, right? So whatever you're doing, what's his name?
Rick.
Rick. Whatever you're doing, try. Do whatever you're doing that seems to make whatever you think be best, and then see is this actually bringing about a more brighter, more stable, steadier, happier, more at ease mind. And if it is, keep doing it, right? Keep, see what you do. And then similarly, if it's making it more and more agitated, depressed, angry, we go, okay, wait, stop, try something different. That's what I encourage Rick.
Just to take that one step further, as we've been practicing and coming here, we find, or I found, that it is improving or positive, is the way you just put it, the positive aspects of the Dharma and all that. Mm-hmm. But I also find the sort of an unintended consequence is it's bringing up feelings of like fear and vulnerability, because for 60 years I kind of saw the world one way, and now we're transitioning to seeing the world slightly different, and I guess there's a fear and anxiety or vulnerability to kind of the change, going through the process of change sort of brings up. But it's all good, like I want to keep going and keep changing because I'm feeling happier and our relationship is better, and so there's all, we enjoy it, but it also, there's a fear and that vulnerability of the newness of seeing the world differently.
Right, that's a very good question. So what's your name?
Evan.
So if I can reformulate your question, please tell me if I'm getting it right. So we can take on some of these practices, we get inspired or interested, and we find that like some of the things that come up are things like a sense of fear, or maybe it's like I remember somebody describing. I was on a retreat recently, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, when the first time I went on a retreat, I started meditating. I was like, my mind was just so angry and all over the place, and I was like, what is this? I wasn't angry before I started meditating, you know. And I was like, well, and of course he says, well, actually the truth is I actually was angry. I just didn't realize it. Or similarly, like, we can feel quite, maybe we get our life in a kind of certain situation, we're quite comfortable, at ease, we feel quite pretty confident, we think we got a sense. And then we get maybe put into a slightly different situation or new situation. We're like, oh. And so part of right effort, it isn't to just like immediately change course as soon as something comes up, like anger rises or fear rises. There is a certain amount of time you need to give it. And unfortunately, I couldn't give you a sense of how long that is. It's going to be very different depending on the situation, person. There is partly because I've experienced something, there is a point of like doing something too long where let's say you take on like monastics, mendicants, we're often doing, like I said, we can take on very austere practices, and it's a lot of them, many of them are encouraged by the Buddha, and I'm gonna take on this austere practice. Okay, yeah, I'm miserable right now, I'm angry. All right, this is good though, right? I'm burning off to violence. Yeah, you get in the sense, and 3 months go by, 6 months go by, and you're like really, really angry. And you're like, oh yeah, I'm really getting rid of these defilements. Like, yeah, maybe something else is going on. So there is that too. You can definitely try out something and sort of lose your wisdom, or maybe you didn't have wisdom, and sort of pressing on too much. But it's okay. That's how we learn. We make mistakes. And like, oh yeah, that didn't work out, and so we adjust course. We realize. So, Evan, I hope that helps. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Hi, Bhante. I have a question about animals, about cats. I have a question about, okay, so if there's a being that you cannot communicate with through words, you can't be like, hey, listen, you're not gonna live here forever, and so you can't get you can get comfortable but not too comfortable. I was taking care of this little cat, and my whole family said, don't sleep with the cat because then he'll get used to sleeping with people. And the cat's family does not want him to sleep with them in bed. But then the cat, I slept with him one night, and then he comes scratching on the door every morning. He's like, let me in. He's not supposed to be in my room. What is, it's not like, is it baby? The cat's a baby. Do you think that, I guess I want to know how to rationalize indulging a cat for what it wants, even though I can't, be like, listen, you don't live here, and your host family isn't going to want this later, but I love you, and I want you to experience, love.
So the cat you're taking care of right now, as a kitten?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like how old is this?
3 months.
Okay, but it's not totally new. It's a little bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
don't have him anymore though.
Oh, okay.
This was
Okay.
The cat is in the monastery, but he's not staying here forever.
Got it. And so I'm trying to understand your question. You're kind of trying to figure out, was that right? It was a good thing to actually maybe allow the cat to sleep with you. Was that the question, or should you have maybe been a little bit more strict with it? Is that the question?
I guess it's when communicating with beings or even people who don't have trouble understanding that things are temporary.
Mhm.
and like letting go of them is like part of.
Oh, yeah, you can't tell anybody to let go. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, my experience is you can actually communicate with it. We do all the time. You know, I mean, this cat clearly
Cat's
is.
feeling the love.
Yeah, he's like, okay, I like this communication.
Yeah. That's very chill now.
And it may not understand the words you're using, but it can understand the kind of affect and feeling tone. We express a lot through our posture, expression, the kind of cadence of our voice. And they can pick up on these things. And I think maybe you won't be able to convince your cat to let go, especially a kitten, but you can communicate that you care, right? And I remember seeing this video of a bunch of puppies, and they're just I don't know, 20 puppies, right? They're just kind of like pretty new, and there's the mama dog there, and they're just going all over the place, and then the mama dog just goes, "Roar, roar, roar," really loud, and all the puppies just stop. And they all come back, and, and and the mama dog takes him and puts him in the right place, and I'm sure the puppies are probably pretty intimidated by that. But at the same time, I'm sure they didn't feel, in the grand scheme of things, that the mother dog wanted to hurt them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And we can do both. So I hope that maybe encourage you to you tried something, you're like, oh, maybe I'm not sure. And in the future, you can try something different and see how that turns out, and you'll get another experience. How do you say? Broaden your experience and wisdom around how to handle these situations.
And if you want a longer term cat that you can, there are options. You can talk to Liz right here. I'm sure she has some cats you
I
can
have
take.
plenty of cats around.
Liz has actually rescued Teddy. Yes, so that's how Teddy ended up here, thanks to Liz, from the streets to the monastery. But actually, one thing that comes to mind about the letting go, if I can
Please,
have a reflection, that I learned actually through the monastic cat that we had before Teddy, Stan. And it was very interesting because I took care of him for quite some time, but I was not always around. And at the very beginning, animals can also develop an attachment towards particular people. And I feel like it can be, if someone is the recipient on the receiving end of that attachment, you feel very nice, and we can actually fuel it. And then that will create a bit of a problem if the animal then is not with us permanently or for the rest of their lives. But if we actually, so we can't teach them how to let go, but we can actually create conditions for them to let go in terms of not be too attached to one particular person, for example. So see him. He has actually spent a lot of time with several different people in the community, and before he was actually with Liz. So Liz has created a lot of great conditions for him to then also be ready to meet new people and create, sort of that, be comfortable with others rather than like my happiness is only dependent on one different person. And so to a certain extent, that also requires ourselves to be capable of letting go of that. I want to be the special person in Teddy's life or in Stan's life or in whoever is the sentient being that we're living with. And when we kind of instead shift it on like what's actually the best for this sentient being. It doesn't really matter if the sentient being is sleeping in her bed, or like what are we doing so that they actually start developing more like a mind that likes, for example, just being with people, not just this person here. And sometimes it can feel a little bit uncomfortable because then, you know, Teddy will pick Bhante Suddhaso and Bhante Jāgaro and not come to Ayya Soma as much. And Ayya Soma was like, oh, but I really missed one. I was, you know, the center of attention. But yeah, then he becomes the center of attention, and it's actually better for him, for his sake, so to speak. Literally and figuratively, you know, he's displaying all of that. So these are just some reflections that I learned through Stan.
And we're coming to the end of our time today.
Do we have time for one more question on the live stream?
Yeah,
I have a
sure.
question.
Oh.
Oh, I have a question too, but,
Yes. Okay, 2 questions.
I'm okay.
so to build off of what you're talking about with like the mom dog and sort of like doing something for the better good of the dog and to create more organization with them, what happens like, now we can bring it to humans, like if you're trying to do something to help somebody and you know it's going to benefit them in the future, but they just look at it like you're harming them intentionally and you're not doing something that's good for them and they know it's best. I'm talking also about children in this sense.
And so, if I understand your question, the question is like, what do you do about a situation where you're trying to do what's best for a child, but how they're perceiving it is that you're intentionally trying to harm them? And so I think it's really good in these situations. Again, applying the Buddha's teachings is always coming back to what is the actual experience that you're having, right? So, okay, you know, you're trying to navigate this situation with other people, but what am I actually feeling right now? How does it actually feel like to me? What are the emotions going through me? How does it manifest in the body? And then trying to see what are my reactions? What am I trying? You know, where am I going with this? And then in seeing, are these movements that I'm having, are they wholesome movements, or are these unwholesome movements? Right? Because a lot of times we can be, you know, on some level trying to help somebody, right? But the energy behind that actually may be quite mixed. There might be part of that, and there might be another part of it that actually might be kind of you say more unwholesome as well. So it's really important to take a step back and just make sure, you know, see kind of what's going on, and then if there is something wholesome here. It's not just, it's kind of a mixture. That's often what often happens. And then we can take another step back and go, okay, what's going to help the situation, right? Because, you know, usually when there's something unwholesome, usually what we need to do is take care of ourselves. There's something here that we're wanting to avoid, and we need to understand where our minds and hearts are coming from. At the same time, you know, if maybe we check ourselves like, actually I'm coming from a good place, but this person is still still really perceiving that what's going on is that they're being hurt, right? And you know, in that sort of situation, what actually comes to mind is, you know, as a monk, you know, I didn't have any children before I became a monk, so you know, I wouldn't really know what to tell you about actually how to, you know, what are good things to do. But there's maybe seeing if you could get like a broader perspective, you know, in terms of maybe so there's other people that you know, or getting other people that have experience with children, maybe this particular situation that you're in. And then, you know, and so that way you can get some confidence, you know, if you get some other people that are, you know, actually, I think you're actually doing okay, you know, or what, you know, what you're, and then you, okay, like, I'm making sure that I'm coming from a good place. I have some confidence from others that I'm not just kind of completely off in left field. And then trying your best to meet that situation as best you can, taking the other person into account, and always trying to adjust. So hope that gives you some options and some other ways of thinking about it.
Was there another
Oh, there's
person?
I think there was the one from online.
Yes,
And that'll
okay.
be the last one.
Sumrit says, Venerable, sometimes when I am facing authority figures such as immigration or anyone in a powerful position, even though I am telling the truth, my mind is fearful. How to overcome this?
So there's two things that come to mind. First is sometimes we put in a situation and the fear being quite palpable, very strong, and maybe the encouragement would be not necessarily trying to find a way of not experiencing fear, right? We're going to be put in a very provoking situation or situation that has pretty substantial consequences. Fear is a pretty ordinary, normal response to this sort of situation. But one of the things I found very important, helpful to do is being willing to be with that experience of fear. In other words, it's not so much trying to get rid of the fear, but seeing if you can be present to the fear. And one of the skills in meditation is that kind of that presence of being with experience. And so meditation often can help with that, just that ability just to be with that experience. Because again, anything that's very, very strong, very provoking, probably pretty unlikely, your mind can just drop whatever it's sort of attached or holding on to. So that's the first thing. The second, maybe let me add one little bit to the first part. So the extent that one can be present to that situation, and then once there's just enough stability there, seeing if one can be willing to be with that experience in a wider way. Like, is there a way of going, oh, like this is really unpleasant. This is really scary. This is really intimidating. Is there a way of encouraging the mind to be with that and to like almost embrace it? Almost be like, yeah, like it doesn't have to be the entire mind because most of the mind's not going to want to be with it. But is it possible to have some part of the mind a bit wider that can be with this experience? And if one can do that might be enough of an opening in order to act skillfully in whatever the situation is. So that's the first thing. The second thing, of course, this has to do with this is something that one can do usually better when not in a supercharged situation. So maybe somebody goes through experience which is extremely intimidating, and it's pretty ordinary common. Afterwards, your mind might go back and think about it quite regularly afterwards. You're like, wow, that was really scary. Like days, weeks, even months. Be kind of your mind kind of reminiscing. And those are very good times that one's in a safe place, one can use the meditative practice to actually find out what are the roots of this? What am I actually holding on to here? What do I not want to let go of? For myself, a lot of my own roots of when there's attachment and clinging a lot of times it usually can be drawn back to, I don't want to experience painful experience, right? But it's going to be different for every person. And it's really important to see, like, okay, well, what am I trying to avoid here? What am I trying to push away? And with that can give you an idea, a direction for how to work with it, those sort of things. So you can't really, don't try to, solve the problem when you're, so to speak, in a very charged situation, but instead try to do that work when you're in a safer situation. That makes sense.
I think we'll go ahead and end it this time. So thank you, Venerable, for leading meditation and sharing words of Dhamma and answering questions. And we can close it this time with 3 more sadhus.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.